Lady slaps stranger, unaware he's a top army officer. The slap was so loud, the whole restaurant went silent. Every single head turned. A woman in a white blazer, pearls around her neck, chest heaving with fury, standing over a man in a plain gray t-shirt and faded jeans who was just sitting there. Calmly. Not moving, not flinching, just sitting there. His cheek was red. The room was frozen. People had their forks halfway to their mouths. A toddler at table 4 had stopped crying. Even the kitchen had gone quiet. And then she pointed her finger at him and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "People like you don't deserve to breathe the same air as us. You are nothing, you hear me, nothing." The man said nothing. He just looked at her. And in that look, in those calm, dark, steady eyes, was something she didn't understand yet. Something that, in about 48 hours, was going to completely destroy her life. Stay with me, because what happens next nobody saw coming. Not her, not her husband, not even the people who thought they knew this man. My name doesn't matter, but this story matters. And if you've ever been looked down on, dismissed, or made to feel like you were nothing, this one is for you. Before we go back to the beginning, if you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. We tell stories that will shake you to your core. You don't want to miss a single one. Now, let's go back to where this all began. His name was Cole. Cole Bennett, 42 years old, 6 feet tall, quiet voice, short gray hair he never bothered to style, hands that were rough from work, real work, the kind that leaves scars. To look at Cole, you would not think anything special. He drove a 10-year-old pickup truck. He wore the same brand of boots he'd worn since he was 25. He bought his coffee black at the gas station on the corner because he said the fancy stuff tasted like warm dessert, not coffee. He lived alone in a 3-bedroom house at the edge of a small town in Virginia, not because he couldn't afford better, but because he liked the quiet. He liked knowing his neighbors. He liked the way the trees looked in October. Cole had spent 22 years in the United States Army. Not as a desk soldier, not behind a computer, in the field, in places most people never hear about on the news, places where the air smelled like burning and the nights were so dark you couldn't see your own hands. He had done things that were classified. He had lost people he loved. He had carried men through sand and mud and fire and brought them home when every logical reason said it was impossible. And he had never once talked about any of it. He didn't need a medal on his chest to know who he was. He already knew. 3 months ago, Cole had retired. 2 stars. Major General Cole Bennett, one of the most decorated officers in the history of his division. But nobody in that small Virginia town knew that, because Cole never told them. He had moved back home, the town he grew up in, because his mother was sick. 80 years old, bad knees, getting forgetful. She needed somebody nearby. And Cole, who had spent his whole adult life serving strangers, figured it was time to serve the one woman who had always believed in him. He was not rich by the town's standards. He had his pension, his savings, enough. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't loud. He did his grocery shopping on Tuesdays, walked his mother's old retriever in the mornings, and once a week he had lunch alone at a place called Miller's, a sit-down restaurant in the middle of town, the kind with red checkered tablecloths and sweet tea and a pie case by the door. That is where she walked in. Her name was Diane Holloway, 45 years old, the wife of Richard Holloway, who owned 3 car dealerships and had recently put his name on a new wing of the county hospital. In their town, the Holloways were what passed for royalty. Diane had grown up with money, married into more of it, and somewhere along the way she had confused her bank account with her worth as a human being. She was the kind of woman who made the waitress repeat the order twice just to remind her who was in charge. The kind who made sure everyone in the room knew when she entered it. She was not a cruel person at her core. At least, that's what her friends said. What they meant was she was only cruel to people she thought couldn't hurt her back. That Tuesday, Diane had come into Miller's with her friend Patty for their usual weekly lunch. She was in a mood. Richard had snapped at her that morning about something stupid. Her personal trainer had rescheduled. The dry cleaner had lost her favorite silk blouse. Small things, rich people problems, but to Diane they felt enormous. She walked in, looked around the restaurant with that expression she wore, like she was inspecting a hotel room she wasn't quite satisfied with, and then she saw that her usual table was taken. Table 5, by the window, the best table in the restaurant. And sitting at it, alone in a gray t-shirt and jeans, drinking black coffee and reading a paperback book, was Cole Bennett. She walked over to him. "Excuse me," she said, not warmly, "this is my table." Cole looked up from his book. He looked at her. He looked at the table. He looked at the restaurant, which had a dozen other open tables. He looked back at her. "I don't see a sign," he said, calm, not rude, just honest. Something in Diane cracked. Maybe it was the bad morning. Maybe it was the fact that he didn't immediately apologize and move. Maybe it was the look in his eyes, that steady, unbothered look, that made her feel like he wasn't impressed by her. Not even a little. "I come here every Tuesday," she said, louder now. "Everyone knows this is my table. The staff knows it. I suggest you pick up your things and find somewhere else to sit." Cole turned a page in his book. "I'm comfortable here," he said. "There are plenty of other tables." The restaurant had gone quiet. A few people were watching. Diane's face went red. What happened next was something she would spend the rest of her life trying to explain, and never quite managing to. She reached out her hand, and she slapped him. Open palm, hard across the cheek. The sound filled the room. Cole's head turned slightly with the force of it. Then slowly, so slowly, he turned back, and he looked at her. That was the moment, right there, that look. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't stand up. He didn't grab her arm or make a scene. He just looked at her with those dark, calm eyes, and in a voice so quiet she almost had to lean in to hear it, he said, "I hope you think very carefully about what you just did." Then he picked up his book, put some cash on the table for his coffee, stood up, and he walked out. Diane stood there, chest heaving, and she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Fear. She didn't know why, she couldn't explain it. He hadn't threatened her. He hadn't yelled. But something in the way he had looked at her, so calm, so certain, so completely unmoved, told some ancient part of her brain that she had just made a very serious mistake. She pushed the feeling away. She sat down at table 5. She ordered her usual. And she told herself it was nothing. Cole drove home. He sat in his driveway for a few minutes. His cheek still stung. Not badly, he'd felt a lot worse, but the sting wasn't the problem. He pulled out his phone and made 2 calls. The first was to a friend, an old army buddy named Travis, who was now a detective with the county sheriff's office. Cole told him what happened, gave him the woman's name. He'd recognized the Holloway name from local news and asked him to simply document it. Travis was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Cole, do you want me to?" "No," Cole said, "not yet, just document it." The second call was to a lawyer, an old family friend named George who had handled Cole's mother's estate papers. Cole told him the same thing, "Just document it. I'm not pressing charges today, but I want a record." Then Cole went inside, checked on his mother, made dinner, and went to bed at 9 o'clock. He slept like a baby. Diane, on the other hand, did not sleep at all. She had told Richard about it at dinner, not the slap, just the rude man who took her table, and Richard had laughed and said she was being dramatic, which made everything worse. By midnight, she was online, trying to find out who Cole Bennett was. She didn't find much. A few old records, a property listing, A photo from a county fair fundraiser years ago, nothing impressive, nothing that explained that look. She told herself she was being ridiculous. She was wrong. Here is what Diane Holloway did not know about Cole Bennett. When Cole was 20 years old, he enlisted in the Army the week after his father died. Not out of grief, out of purpose. He needed something larger than himself to hold on to. He found it. He rose through the ranks with the kind of quiet, brutal efficiency that made his superiors keep moving him up and up and up. Not because he was flashy, not because he played politics, but because when things went wrong, and in the places Cole operated, things always went wrong, he was the man everyone looked to. He had served in 4 combat zones. He had led the kind of missions that don't appear in history books because they never officially happened. He had pulled 11 men out of an ambush in the dark with nothing but a radio and a knife, and the kind of calm that some people are born with and others spend their whole lives trying to fake. He had been awarded the Distinguished Service Medal, the Legion of Merit, and 3 Bronze Stars. He had retired as a 2-star Major General, one of fewer than 400 active-duty Major Generals in the entire United States military. He had been asked twice to consider running for Congress. He had said no both times. He had been offered board positions at 2 major defense contractors. He had said no to those 2. Cole Bennett wanted nothing from the world except a little quiet and a good cup of black coffee, and enough time to take care of his mother before she forgot his name entirely. He was not a man who showed off. He was not a man who used his rank as a shield. But he was also not a man who allowed himself to be struck without consequence. He believed in accountability. He had built his entire life on it. And he believed quietly, firmly, without anger, that Diane Holloway deserved to understand what accountability actually felt like. 3 days after the slap, something happened that Diane had not anticipated. A video appeared on social media. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't close-up. It was the shaky footage from a young woman at a corner table who had been recording a reel of her food when the incident happened, and realizing what she'd caught, had kept recording. You could see everything. You could see Diane walk over. You could hear her voice sharp and cold. You could see Cole's calm expression. You could see the slap. You could see him stand up quietly and walk out. And in the caption, the young woman had written just 5 words. She slapped a stranger, watch this. It had 4 million views by Thursday morning. The comments were not kind to Diane. Diane woke up to her phone ringing off the hook. Her sister, her college roommate, a woman she hadn't spoken to in 6 years who had tagged her in the video with a laughing emoji. Richard saw it at the dealership. His manager showed him. He called Diane immediately, and his voice was very different from the one that had laughed at her 3 nights ago. "Diane," he said, "who is that man?" "I don't know," she said. "You need to find out," he said, "now." But it was already too late to get ahead of it. Because by Thursday afternoon, somebody in the comments had figured it out. A retired soldier who had served under Cole, who recognized the face, who wrote a single comment that stopped the entire internet cold. That's Major General Cole Bennett, 2 stars, 22 years, 4 combat zones. The woman just slapped one of the most decorated officers in the U.S. Army, in a restaurant, over a table. The comment got 300,000 likes in 6 hours. Now here is where the story gets complicated, and where it gets deeply, painfully human. Because what followed was not just public embarrassment, it was a full accounting of a life. Journalists started calling the Holloway dealerships, not because of the slap, but because once the internet decided it was interested in Diane Holloway, it started looking at everything else too. And some people had things to say. Former employees at Richard's dealerships described a workplace where Diane occasionally showed up and made the staff's lives miserable with demands and put-downs. A waitress from a different restaurant came forward with her own story, quiet, told without drama, about a time Diane had reduced her to tears over a wrong drink order and then left no tip. Small stories, each one small, but together they painted something. Richard's business took a hit. 3 corporate partnerships quietly put meetings on hold. His bank called. Diane stopped going outside. And then Cole's lawyer sent a letter. Not demanding money, not threatening a lawsuit, just a formal, legal, documented letter that stated clearly and calmly what had happened, with the names of 11 witnesses who had been in the restaurant that day, with the security footage the restaurant had quietly preserved. And with one simple request. A public apology. That was it, a public apology. Richard read the letter and sat down on the edge of the bed and put his head in his hands. Diane read it 3 times. And something cracked open inside her, something she had been keeping very tightly closed for a very long time. This is the part of the story I need you to really hear. Because the twist isn't what you think it is. You might be thinking the twist is that Cole was famous, that the powerful woman got humbled by the more powerful man, that justice was served and the credits rolled. But that's not the twist. Here's what actually happened. Diane Holloway did not send the public apology through a PR firm. She did not post a carefully worded statement on social media drafted by a lawyer. She drove to Cole's house. Alone, no Richard, no Patty, no pearls. She wore a plain blue sweater and her hair was down and her eyes were red from 3 days of not sleeping, and she knocked on the door. Cole's mother answered. 80 years old, soft white hair, a little confused about who this woman was, but she smiled and said, "Cole's in the yard, sweetheart," and held the door open like it was the most natural thing in the world. Diane walked around the side of the house. Cole was kneeling in a garden patch beside the fence, turning soil, wearing the same gray t-shirt. He heard her footsteps and looked up. His expression didn't change. Not surprise, not anger, just that look. She stopped a few feet away. She said, "I came to apologize, not for the internet, not for the lawyers, for me, because what I did was wrong. What I said was wrong. I don't know you. I looked at you and I saw what I wanted to see, and I have been doing that my whole life and I don't." Her voice broke. She stood in his backyard in her plain blue sweater and she cried. Real tears, the ugly kind, the kind that have been building for years and finally have nowhere left to go. Cole put down his trowel, he stood up, he looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Do you want some coffee?" She looked up, blinked. "It's from the gas station," he added, "fair warning." She laughed. It was the strangest, most broken little laugh, but it was real. They sat on his back porch for 2 hours. He didn't tell her his rank. He didn't tell her about the medals or the missions or the men he'd lost. He told her about his mother, about how she used to make biscuits from scratch every Sunday, about how last week she called him by his father's name and he had to go sit in his truck for a few minutes. And Diane, who had not had a real conversation in years, only performances, told him about how she had grown up poor. How she had worked double shifts at a grocery store to pay for her first year of college. How somewhere between marrying Richard and becoming Mrs. Holloway, she had started to be afraid. Afraid that if she let her guard down, if she stopped performing, if she admitted she wasn't as important as she pretended to be, she would go back to being nobody. "You were never nobody," Cole said quietly. She looked at him. "And neither was the woman you treated like nothing at that restaurant, or anyone else you've done this to." He said it without cruelty, just truth. That's the part you have to carry. She nodded. "I know," she said. The public apology went out the next day, handwritten, scanned and posted. Not perfect, not polished, ink smudged in one corner where she had written and crossed out and rewritten. The internet noticed that. Some people were still cruel, but many were not. Many recognized what it looks like when someone is telling the truth. Cole accepted it. He made a short statement through his lawyer. "The matter is resolved. I wish the Holloways well." That was it. No press conference, no victory lap. He went back to his garden. But the world was not quite done with the story. Because two things happened in the weeks that followed that turned this from a viral moment into something that lingered. First, the young woman who had recorded the video, the one who had 4 million views, she reached out to Cole through a mutual acquaintance and asked if she could donate the ad revenue from the video to a veterans charity. Cole told her to split it between two organizations he knew personally. She did. It was a significant amount of money. Second, and this is the part that hit people hardest, Cole's mother passed away, quietly in her sleep, 11 days after Diane came to the house. Cole had been with her. He had been holding her hand. And the last coherent thing she had said to him, the night before, was that she was glad he had come home, that she always knew he would. He posted one thing on a social media account he barely ever used, a photo of his mother, young, in a sundress, laughing at something outside the frame, and below it just, "Ruth Bennett, 1944-2025. She made the best biscuits I ever tasted. She believed in me before I believed in myself. Rest now, Mom, you earned it." It got shared 2 million times. Not because of the drama, because of the love in it. Here is what I want you to walk away with. This story is not about a powerful man humbling a rude woman. It is not about rank or status or who wins on the internet. This story is about what we see when we look at other people. Diane looked at Cole and saw nothing, a nobody in a gray shirt, and she treated him accordingly. But here's the thing, Cole would have deserved basic human respect even if he had never served a day in uniform. Even if he had no medals, no rank, no distinguished record. Every single person in that restaurant deserved to be treated with dignity, not because of what they had done, but because of what they were. Human. The real twist in this story, the twist Diane herself discovered, was not that Cole was a major general. It was that the thing she had been most afraid of her whole life, being seen as nobody, being treated as small, was exactly what she had been doing to everyone around her. And the only way out of that prison was to put down the armor and tell the truth. Cole could have pressed charges. He could have sued. He could have gone on every news program that called him and told his story and watched Diane Holloway's world burn to the ground. He asked for an apology. Because he didn't need her destruction. He needed her to understand. That's not weakness. That's the most powerful thing a person can do. And Diane. Last I heard, she had gone back to volunteering at the food bank she used to donate to years ago. Back when she was still the woman in the grocery store uniform who knew what it felt like to be invisible. She said it felt like coming home. Cole still has lunch at Miller's on Tuesdays. Table 5 by the window. Nobody bothers him about it anymore. If this story moved you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you're new here, subscribe right now because we have more stories just like this one waiting for you. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of each other.